President Trump appears to be losing his grip on a group of voters that helped him win back the White House. Puck News obtained new data that shows Trump's approval rating among young men plummeted to 46%, down 10 points from last spring. This data comes from a major report by a Democratic-led project called Speaking with American Men. It also found only 27% of the young men polled said Trump delivered for people like them, while 26% said he's made an effort but hasn't delivered. Joining us now is John Della Volpe, who spearheaded that survey. He's the director of polling at the Harvard Kennedy School Institute of Politics. He's also an MS Now political contributor. So, John, so much to dive into here with this survey, but what was your big overall takeaway from young men and why Trump's support has had that double-digit drop?
Well, thanks for having me. I think young men are a significant reason why Trump is in the White House today. But when we look forward now 1 year since young men in particular helped him get to the White House, we see that 25% of those young men who voted for him a year ago said that if they did it over again, they wouldn't vote for him. This was a 10-point shift between 2020 and 2024. And what we found was young men chose Trump a year ago for a basic reason, for some more economic stability in their life. Now, a year later, they're reassessing not whether they should continue to be involved in politics, but whether they should continue to support Donald Trump, given their economic situation today.
John, there's been a lot of hand-wringing among Democrats and people sort of left of center about the fact that young men seem to be more attracted to the manosphere, toxic masculinity, more right-wing, stereotypically hyper-masculine role models that are more associated with the right. In your polling, however, you found that the number one most admired person, or most approved person at the very least, in your polling, was Barack Obama, who is not of that sort of right-wing manosphere mold. What do you read into that? Why he still looms so large in the favorability among young men, and whether there are messages for politicians in the Democratic Party about how to win back these male voters, if there is anything that could be gleaned from that.
There is. No, listen, I think the big takeaway from this survey, Catherine, is that, Breitbart said a generation ago that politics is downstream of culture. Okay. What this report indicates is politics is downstream of experience, the day-to-day lived experience that millions of young men are having today. And when they look at that, it's not about ideology, it's about who's delivering. Who's delivering today? We know that only 27% say Donald Trump is delivering for them. 47% in the same survey say Donald Trump is creating more chaos. And when they look back, they actually remember that Barack Obama did deliver. They delivered health care specifically to younger people, and that is not forgotten by younger people, especially in this era.
Let me play for you, to pick up on Catherine's point, what some of the kind of manosphere podcasters, the popular ones, Joe Rogan, who also ranked up there on this survey. Let me play for you what some of them have been saying about Donald Trump recently. Take a listen.
I voted for none of this. He's doing the exact opposite of everything I voted for.
Now you have this insane policy where they're going to Home Depot and rounding people up, and it's kind of scary. I really thought they were just going to go after the criminals.
He's threatened to kill protesters in our country.
I mean, you've said that politics is downstream from experience, but do you think that any of these podcasters combined who have been criticizing Trump over the last several months, who kind of to some extent agitated a little bit of his base to go out and vote for him in 2024, do you think that has had an effect whatsoever on the fact that he's become a little bit less popular?
Sure, they're clearly influencers. The Donald Trump and the MAGA machine spent tens of millions of dollars kind of engaging with influencers like some of the folks that we just saw in that clip. But the reality is that almost 9 out of 10 young men are carrying stress on their shoulders on a regular basis. 77% nearly 4 in 5 young men say they feel like they're by themselves in this world, that no one has their back. And they thought for a moment, because Joe Rogan and Theo Vaughn and a lot of those other influencers told young people that he would have their back, that he was listening. But younger men in particular, they're not listening to that. They're not, those influencers aren't the ones who are paying their bills. They're not the ones who are paying their rent, right? Or helping them think through the changes that AI will have on their lives and their livelihood. Those are the questions that young men are facing, and they're looking for leaders. Donald Trump today is not answering those questions, and there's a significant opportunity for Democrats to win this cohort back in the midterm elections.
John, what do they think of J.D. Vance, who clearly is working to sort of solidify support so that he can be seen as the successor to Trump's movement? He basically came out at Turning Point onto the stage with Erica Kirk to establish just that. And he even has sort of made these overtures to very controversial, in some cases, just straight up abhorrent people like Nick Fuentes, saying he's not going to cancel them. In a way, it seems to court some of these young guys. But from the polling here, it doesn't look like they necessarily love him back. What do you know?
No, but you can see here, I think by a 2-to-1 margin, right, they have negative views towards J.D. Vance. I mean, he's trying to, I think, in some way kind of be the heir, to the Turning Point crowd and Charlie Kirk. Listen, Charlie Kirk was clearly a controversial figure, but what young men appreciated about Charlie Kirk, whether or not they agreed or not, they appreciated the fact that he felt authentic to himself, and he would be open to kind of debating the things that he believed in. That was something that is hard to transfer. I know J.D. Vance has made some effort at that, but it really seems to not be connecting with younger men. 33, 35%, I think, favorability rating right now.
John De La Vope, thank you so much for joining us and sharing your insights.
Thank you.